artificial intelligence, drones, quantum computing, biotechnology. These are some of the most innovative and sensitive things being born out of the ingenuity of the American private sector. But how are these things intersecting with global conflict, intelligence, and national defense? One of the outfits that's been sitting in the middle of that intersection through the first quarter of this century is In-Q-Tel, essentially a venture capital firm begun with US taxpayer money and operating under the purview of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, to invest in cutting-edge companies developing some of the most futuristic technologies that are reshaping our world. I'm Guy Taylor, National Security Editor at the Washington Times, and for this edition of the Threat Status Special Video Series, we're grateful to be joined by In-Q-Tel President and CEO Steve Bowsher. Steve, you've had a long career focused on identifying and leveraging emerging technologies for the US national security community. What is In-Q-Tel really? What is its mission? And why is the CIA involved?
Great. Well, thank you, first of all, very much for asking me to be on the show. I'm very excited to be here. In-Q-Tel is an independent not-for-profit. We're a 501c3 that was created by CIA 25 years ago to bridge the gap between the innovation occurring in the venture-backed startup companies here in the United States and the technical challenges facing the agency at the time. Mm-hmm. What was controversial back then and more readily accepted today is that the great innovation engine in the United States is these venture-backed startup companies. And if you think about the technologies you use in everyday life, whether it's your Apple iPhone, your Facebook, your Alexa electronic device, all of those companies, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, were at one time venture-backed startup companies. And CIA realized that in order for them to be able to accomplish their mission, they had to access innovation that was occurring in these startup companies, and they weren't able to do that through their traditional procurement mechanisms. So they created In-Q-Tel. And as you said, In-Q-Tel is an investment platform. We invest in these startup companies for two reasons, which I'll get to in a second. But the point I would make is, as a not-for-profit, we're a strategic investor. We're not investing for financial return. We're investing for strategic purpose, and that strategic purpose is to help CIA and now the 9 other government agencies that we work with achieve their mission. We invest in companies for two reasons. The first reason is we invest in companies to deliver capabilities to CIA, NSA, and other agencies we work with. And by that, I mean, when we make an investment, we also facilitate the piloting of those technologies by the agencies we work with. And if the pilot goes well, the end agency will contract directly with the portfolio company for more stuff, more licenses, more gadgets, whatever they sell. And we call that an adoption when that happens. The second reason we invest is to deliver insight. It's important for the CIA and other government agencies to understand where commercial technology is going, how they may be able to take advantage of it, but also how their adversaries may take advantage of it. China uses commercial technology as a strategic lever in nation-state competition, and it's important for the U.S. government agencies we work with to understand what they're up to.
All right, but most of the companies that In-Q-Tel invests in are publicly announced on the fund's website.
Absolutely.
One of the most prominent being Peter Thiel's Palantir,
correct.
An investment in AI applications. There are many others like Trans-Celestial, ClearSpace, Big Eye, companies that most Americans haven't heard of. Right. Can you give me an example of a successful investment into something that's having world-shaping relevance?
Sure, I'll give you two if you don't mind. First is a company called Rocket Lab. So Rocket Lab is in the commercial space industry, and that was an industry that 15 years ago didn't really exist. If you wanted a satellite capability, you had to use a satellite typically built by a Boeing or a Lockheed Martin, funded by the US government. And a set of people started to build small, cheaper, more maneuverable satellites, and this was the idea of commercial satellite industry being born. But in order to launch those satellites in the sky, they needed a launch vehicle that was specially purpose-built for small satellites, because the traditional launch vehicles were built to launch really large, expensive satellites for Boeing and Lockheed. Okay. We invested in a company called Rocket Lab out of New Zealand, so interesting factor there. And it was the first commercial launch company focused on small satellites. This company has now become very successful. It's a public company, and it has ushered in, by providing this capability, a world in which now there are commercial satellites up in the sky, such as Starlink, that people are using for internet access, that would not be able to be up, launched, and operating in the sky without a small satellite launch industry that Rocket Lab has led.
Okay.
The second company I would point out in industry is synthetic biology. This is the ability to build organisms from certain materials instead of having them develop in nature. We invested several years ago in a company called Ginkgo Bioworks out of Boston that's in the synthetic biology area. They make products that are used in food, in pharma, and in cosmetics, actually. And Ginkgo was one of the first companies in this space. And again, by investing early in both Rocket Lab and Ginkgo, we were able to provide our agencies access to this technology early, understand its various applications, and through work programs, we were able to help those agencies take advantage of them.
So we're really talking about the intersection between these developing technologies and U.S. intelligence or national security. What is it about the global threat matrix today that makes this relevant and important? Why is In-Q-Tel so involved in this? And
sure,
let's look out at the Middle East wars, for instance, or great power competition with China.
Absolutely. The threat matrix that the United States faces today, I believe, has never been more dangerous or threatening, not to use the word twice, certainly in my lifetime. So we have near peer competitors in Russia and China that are aggressively trying to reshape the geopolitical landscape and claim more power, control, and influence for themselves. And we're seeing that in conflicts that exist right now in Ukraine and conflicts that could potentially exist in the South China Sea. We're also seeing at the same time, because of emerging technologies and commercial technologies, a shrinking of the gap between the Davids and the Goliaths out there. It used to be there were a handful of countries that had significant technical advantage when it came to military operations over the rest of the world. And I think that is dangerous for the United States. At the nation-state level, China is using commercial technology as a strategic lever. Huawei is a way that they project power and influence geopolitical events around the world. Whoever controls the next generation telecommunication systems, whoever controls satellites in the sky, whoever controls the shipping lanes on the sea, all those commercial technologies are going to be a way to project power and influence geopolitical events. And the United States needs to stay at the cutting edge of those technologies in order to remain the preeminent economic and national security power.
So since being founded in 1999 with about $50 million in U.S. taxpayer money, and there have been many more millions appropriated through Congress, but In-Q-Tel has really grown through its investments in the private sector to be about $1 billion VC fund, and investing in something like 700 companies, is that right, over the last 25 years. And at this point, there are actually In-Q-Tel offices in a few different corners of the world. Why are there these overseas offices? And I mean, one has opened, I think, this year or last year in Singapore, for instance. What's going on with that?
Right. So you are correct. We've invested in over 700 companies in our lifetime. The vast majority of them are here in the United States. We invest somewhere between 10 to 15% of our deals are outside the United States in such exotic locales, typically as Great Britain and Australia and New Zealand. And we do that because the United States does not have a monopoly on innovation. We're still the most innovative country in the world, which is why 85 to 90% of our investments are here in the United States. But there are certain categories of companies, such as the Rocket Lab, the one that I mentioned from New Zealand, that our government agencies can leverage their technology to help achieve mission, and we want to provide them access to do that. So today we have, the vast majority of In-Q-Tel employees are in our 3 U.S. offices here in the D.C. area, in Silicon Valley, and in Boston. But we do have offices in England, Germany, Australia, and Singapore. And those offices provide us the ability to stay on top of the innovation that's occurring elsewhere. We do not invest in companies in China and Russia and other places like that, because our agencies are not going to take advantage of the technologies that are built there. But they are going to take advantage of technologies built in the UK, in Canada, in Australia, and New Zealand.
How are you preventing technology that In-Q-Tel invests in from either being stolen by or ending up in the hands of some U.S. adversaries, China, for example? Right.
So every time we make an investment, we set up a briefing for that company with our security team, and we talk to them about best practices when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to physical security, and when it comes to IP protection. China is out there trying to access technology through a variety of manners. They try to buy it and copy it. They try to buy the companies and repatriate the technology back into China, and they try and steal it at times. And so we do our best to brief our companies, and just like any other company in the defense industrial base, those companies need to do everything they can to protect themselves from Chinese attacks.
Let's talk a little bit about the defense industrial base, or it could be called the military industrial complex. We're at a moment now with the Pentagon announcing something called the Replicator program, which has really only recently been defined in the public narrative as something that's shifting conventional U.S. military power toward more of a marriage, if you would, with Silicon Valley and emerging technology, AI. And there are a lot of implications of this, including generative AI that can help automated airplanes, drones communicate with each other in previously inconceivable ways. What can you tell me about Replicator? And I know that In-Q-Tel, the companies that In-Q-Tel invests in have applications beyond intelligence. We're also talking about DoD and the Pentagon. What is the relevance of this Replicator shift right now?
Sure. So if you look at the conflicts, I should say, both in Ukraine and Gaza, one of the things that everyone's looking at those conflicts to get clues as to what the next generation of conflict looks like. And one of the things people are observing is that drones have a big role to play in there. And my point before about the shrinking of the gap between the Davids and Goliaths, Ukrainians are using commercial off-the-shelf drones to disrupt very high-priced, very expensive, very exquisitely capable Russian airborne platforms. Similarly, Hamas used to sort of slip underneath the Iron Dome to attack Israel. And so drones and are going to be a clear, important platform in the future of conflict. And unfortunately, the drones that are most capable of having impact are the cheap, disposable, attributable autonomous drones that China has been making for a number of years for the commercial markets. And the US does not really have a commercial drone manufacturing base. And one of the goals of Replicator, I believe, is to stimulate the growth of that, because if we end up in a conflict with China, we can't expect to be able to source materials and manufacturing and finished products from China. So I believe the goal of Replicator is to accelerate the development of our own drone industrial base, because we see it as critical to the future of conflicts around the world.
Steve Bowsher, this is incredibly interesting and informative. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the Threat Status Special Video Series. I'm Guy Taylor. Until next time.
Thank you.